Homeowner steps onto their porch stretching. As the morning sun warms their skin, they take a deep breath, enjoying the quiet moment before the day begins. But the peace doesn't last long. The sound of the mail truck rumbles in the distance, and soon a stack of letters lands in their mailbox. Among the usual bills and advertisements sits a thick envelope with the bold letters "HO Notice" printed on the front. With a sigh, they tear it open, expecting the usual reminders about long maintenance or parking restrictions. Instead, their eyes widen in shock as they scan the document. Their monthly HO fee has skyrocketed to an absurd $20. Homeowner blinks through, reads the number, certain they must be seeing things. But no, the outrageous figure is real, and there's no explanation, just a generic statement about necessary community improvements. Their heart pounds, frustration bubbling to the surface. They flip through the packet, looking for justification, a breakdown of expenses, anything that explains how this could possibly be legal. But all they find are vague references to rising costs and maintenance. Homeowner clenches their jaw, fingers tightening around the paper. They've lived in this neighborhood for years and never seen a jump like this. Something is definitely wrong. Without hesitation, they grab their phone and call the HO office. A line rings once, twice, then a bored voice answers. HO office, this is Janet. How can I help you? Homeowner takes a deep breath, steadying their tone. Hi, yes. I just received my new HO fee statement, and there has to be some mistake. My fees have more than tripled. That can't be right. There's got to be some kind of error. There's a pause, then Janet sighs, flipping through papers on her end. No mistake, she says flatly. New rates went into effect this month. Homeowner's grip tightens on the phone. That's ridiculous. You can't just increase fees without notice. What exactly are we paying for? Janet lets out an exaggerated yawn, as if she's heard this complaint 100 times already. Look, I don't make the rules. If you have concerns, you can take it up with the board. They meet once a month. Next meeting is in 3 weeks. She pauses. But if you miss a payment, there's a late fee, just so you know. Anger surges through homeowners' veins. They know exactly what's happening. The board is hoping people will just roll over and accept it. Most residents won't have the time or energy to fight back, and the ones who try will be drowned in bureaucracy. But not them, no way. Homeowner hangs up and heads straight to their neighbor, Donovan, an elderly man who has lived in the neighborhood for decades. As soon as he opens the door, his expression tells homeowner everything they need to know. His brows are furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line. Before homeowner can even speak, he weighs his own HO notice in the air. You got one too, didn't you? Highway robbery, that's what it is. Donovan shakes his head, muttering under his breath about how his fees used to be reasonable, now but higher than his mortgage. He already tried calling, but got the same runaround. Homeowner listens intently, nodding as other neighbors start gathering around. Similar complaints, frustrations mounting. One woman mentions she was fined for having her garbage bins out for an extra hour. Another says she's being charged for repairs she never approved. It's clear the HO has been exploiting residents for a long time, and now they've pushed too far. But what the board doesn't know is that they picked the wrong person to scam. Homeowner isn't just any frustrated resident. They have years of experience as an auditor, specializing in financial fraud. And if the HO is hiding something, they're about to find out exactly what it is. Homeowner stands in the middle of the cul-de-sac, watching as more neighbors step out of their houses, some holding their HO statements, others shaking their heads in frustration. Voices rise, overlapping complaints filling the air. Homeowner takes a deep breath, scanning the crowd, realizing just how many people are affected by this outrageous fee hike, and yet no one seems to know where the money is actually going. Donovan is the first to speak up again, his face red with anger. Been living here 20 years, never seen fees jump like this. And for what, the clubhouse is still falling apart, the sidewalks still crack every winter, and nobody even cleans the damn pool. A woman named Lisa steps forward, clutching a folder to her chest, her eyes sharp with suspicion. It's not just the fees, she says in a low voice. I've been tracking our HO expenses for months, and something doesn't add up. Homeowners' interest peaks instantly. They step closer, lowering their voice. What do you mean? Lisa sighs, glancing around before opening her folder. She flips through pages of notes, bank statements, invoices, all photocopied and highlighted for months. Our HO has been charging us for services that don't exist. Look at this. She points to a payment made to a landscaping company, $5,000 last month. But nobody came to trim the hedges. And when I looked up the company, it doesn't even exist. Homeowner studies, the documents feeling their pulse quicken. This is exactly what they suspected. Something shady is happening. Another neighbor, Mark, a father of 2 steps forward, crossing his arms. I tried questioning them last year when my fees went up by a few $100. Suddenly, I started getting violations for ridiculous things like my car being parked an inch over the line or my grass being too tall. He shakes his head. I had to pay over $1,000 in fines just to keep them off my back. Lisa nods. They do that to anyone who pushes back. And if you fight them, they threaten legal action. Homeowner exhales slowly, their mind racing. If the HOA is running a scam, this could be big. And if no one stops them, things will only get worse. They glance back at Lisa's folder, then at the frustrated faces around them. It's clear no one trusts the HOA anymore, but they don't know how to fight back. Lucky for them, Homeowner knows exactly where to start. I need copies of everything, Homeowner says firmly. Anything you have on expenses, fines, contracts, anything that looks suspicious. Lisa doesn't hesitate, handing over the folder. I have more at home. Give me an hour. Homeowner nods. Good. And if anyone else has documents, bring them to me. We're going to figure out exactly where our money is going. A murmur of agreement ripples through the crowd. For the first time, instead of feeling powerless, the neighbors feel like something might actually change. But Homeowner knows they have to move fast. If the HOA catches wind of their investigation, they'll find a way to cover their tracks or worse, retaliate against the residents. Homeowner glances toward the HOA office down the street. The building seems quiet, but they know inside the board members are sitting comfortably, thinking they have complete control, thinking no one would ever challenge them. They're wrong, Homeowner thinks as they tighten their grip on the documents, because they just picked a fight with the wrong person and they're about to regret it. Homeowner sits at their kitchen table surrounded by stacks of papers, financial statements, invoices, emails printed from the HOA website. They have spent hours highlighting discrepancies, comparing figures, and cross-referencing vendor payments with actual services provided. The deeper they dig, the more obvious it becomes. The HOA board is stealing from the community, and they have been doing it for years. The numbers don't lie, Homeowner mutters under their breath, running a finger over a suspicious transaction. $10,000 paid to a maintenance company that doesn't seem to exist, another $8,000 labeled as emergency repairs, but with no details on what was supposedly fixed. Late fees collected from homeowners, but never accounted for in the official budget. It is a classic case of financial fraud. A knock at the door breaks their focus. Lisa steps inside, carrying another folder, her face tense. I found more, she says, dropping it onto the table. Homeowner flips through the papers. More suspicious charges, fake contractors, outrageous fines used to pad the HOA's accounts. Lisa pulls out her phone and scrolls through her notes. My cousin works in real estate, she says. She checked the property records. And guess what? 3 of the HOA board members own homes in a different neighborhood, a gated community, with no HOA fees at all. Homeowners' eyes narrow, so they're bleeding us dry, while living somewhere with no restrictions. Figures. Donovan arrives next, carrying an old binder. He places it on the table with a smirk. Thought you might like to see this. It's from 10 years ago, back when our HOA was actually run properly, before these crooks took over. Homeowner flips through the pages, instantly noticing a difference. The fees were reasonable, the financial records transparent. The HOA had actual meetings where homeowners were allowed to vote on decisions. Then somewhere along the way, everything changed. Fees skyrocketed, transparency disappeared, violations became more frequent. It's like they turned the whole system into their personal piggy bank. Homeowner leans back, rubbing their temples. They could take this to a lawyer, but lawsuits take time and money. They need something faster, something that forces the HOA to answer to everyone. They need to expose them in a way they can't ignore. Then an idea strikes. HOA meeting is in 2 days, Homeowner says, tapping the folder. I say we give them a little surprise. Lisa grins. Oh, I like where this is going. Donovan chuckles, shaking his head. And here I thought retirement would be boring. Homeowner spends the next 48 hours preparing. They print copies of every fraudulent transaction, highlight every fake invoice, put together a detailed breakdown of exactly how much money has been stolen. But they don't stop there. They dig into public records, find the board members' business dealings, uncover personal conflicts of interest, things that would make any ethical committee squirm. By the time the meeting rolls around, they are ready. As they walk into the HOA office, they feel every set of eyes on them, neighbors whispering, board members smirking, thinking they are just another homeowner coming to complain. They have no idea what's about to hit them. Homeowner takes a seat in the front row, lays the thick folder on their lap, and waits. This is going to be fun. Homeowner sits in the front row, their thick folder resting on their lap, while the HOA board members shuffle papers at the long table at the front of the room. The president, a smug man in his late 50s, clears his throat and taps the microphone. Welcome everyone to our monthly HOA meeting. We appreciate your time and cooperation as we discuss important matters concerning our community. Before we begin, please remember that all financial decisions have already been approved and are final, so let's keep discussions respectful and productive. Homeowner bites back a smirk. He's trying to shut down any opposition before it even starts. Too bad for him. Homeowner has no intention of staying quiet. The board moves through their usual routine, approving minor repairs, discussing landscaping adjustments, pretending they are doing real work while ignoring the biggest issue in the room. Then finally, the floor was opened for homeowner concerns. Homeowner stands up, folder in hand. The board president sighs, rubbing his temples, but he already knows this is going to be a headache. Please state your name and concern. Homeowner steps forward, clearing their throat loud enough for everyone to hear. My concern is about the HOA fees, specifically why they've tripled in the last few months, and where exactly that money is going. Murmurs ripple through the room, neighbors shifting in their seats. The board president puts on a tight smile as he leans into the microphone. We've already explained this at length in our notices. Fees have increased due to necessary improvements and rising costs. Homeowner nods, flipping open their folder, writes, so I took the liberty of going through the financial records to see what those rising costs actually are. The room falls silent as homeowner pulls out the first document. This is an invoice for $10,000 supposedly paid to a maintenance company, except when I looked up the business, it doesn't exist, at least not legally. The crowd murmurs louder. Homeowner flips to the next page. Here's another $8,000 labeled emergency repairs. But there's no documentation of what was repaired, and no record of any contractors being hired that same month. A few board members shift uncomfortably, exchanging glances. The president's smile falters. Homeowner continues, methodically laying out every piece of evidence, highlighting fraudulent charges, personal expenses disguised as community fees, unauthorized fines that never made it to the official budget. By the time they finish, the room is in an uproar. Neighbors are shouting, demanding answers, pointing fingers at the board members, who now look pale and cornered. The board president slams his hand on the table. That's enough, he barks, voice shaking. These accusations are outrageous and completely unfounded. Homeowner tilts their head. Unfounded? That's funny, because I have copies of every transaction, every falsified document, every shady payment. And if that's not enough to convince everyone, I also looked up something interesting. They reach into their bag and pull out printed property records. Turns out 3 of our board members don't even live in this neighborhood. They live in a gated community with no HOA fees at all, so while we're all paying ridiculous rates and getting fined for nonsense, they're sitting pretty without spending a dime. The room erupts in chaos, neighbors shouting, demanding the board step down. One woman yells for an immediate vote. Others call for legal action. The board president is sweating now, his fingers gripping the table as he stammers for control. But it's too late. The truth is out, and there's no putting it back. Homeowner takes a step closer, lowering their voice just enough for the board members to hear. You thought you could keep stealing from us, and no one would notice. Too bad you picked the wrong neighborhood to scam, because this isn't over, not even close. The HOA meeting is complete chaos. Homeowners are on their feet, shouting over one another, demanding answers, demanding justice. Some are waving their own notices in the air. Others are pulling out their phones, recording the entire scene. The board president's face is red with frustration, his hands gripping the table as he struggles to regain control. Everyone, please, he says, voice strained. Let's keep things civil. These accusations are baseless. We follow all legal guidelines and financial protocols. If anyone has concerns, they can submit them in writing. Homeowner lets out a sharp laugh. In writing, so you can ignore them, just like you ignored every request for financial transparency. The board vice president, a woman in her 60s with a permanent frown, folds her arms. Look, we understand that the fee increase was unexpected. But we assure you it was necessary to keep the community running properly. Homeowner narrows their eyes. Running properly, then explain why our clubhouse is falling apart, why the pool is always dirty, why the landscaping company we supposedly paid $5,000 a month to doesn't even exist. Gasps spread through the room. Neighbors turn to each other, murmuring disbelief, anger growing by the second. Homeowner steps closer to the table, placing their folder down loudly. I have proof of every single fraudulent charge, every fake expense, every mismanaged fund. And if you think this is just some angry resident making noise, you're wrong, because I also reached out to a state financial auditor, and guess what? They're very interested in our HOA's finances. The board president's face drains of color. The treasurer, an older man who has been silent the whole meeting, suddenly speaks up, voice shaking. You went to the state. Homeowner nods slowly. I did. And if I were you, I'd start getting my records in order, because an investigation is coming. Neighbors cheer, clapping, some even laughing with relief, knowing that someone is finally holding the HOA accountable. The president slams his palm on the table. This is ridiculous and completely uncalled for. You're causing unnecessary panic. And if you continue to spread misinformation, we will have no choice but to take legal action. Homeowner leans forward, lowering their voice, but making sure everyone can hear. Legal action. Interesting, because once this investigation is complete, I have a feeling you'll be the one needing a lawyer. The vice president stands suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Enough of this. We are still the governing body of this HOA, and we are within our rights to enforce community standards. Homeowner tilts their head. Enforcing community standards or stealing from the community? The woman glares. But before she can respond, another neighbor stands up, voice trembling with rage. I've lived here for 30 years, and this HOA has turned into a dictatorship. We want an immediate vote to remove the board. Cheers erupt. Others join in demanding new leadership, demanding change. The board members are visibly panicked. The treasurer looks like he might faint. The secretary, a quiet man who has barely spoken the entire night, raises his hands, trembling. I think we should let the community decide. Homeowner smacks. Oh, don't worry, they already have. The president tries one last desperate move, folding his hands, trying to sound reasonable. Neighbors, friends, let's not make rash decisions. Let's take time to review everything thoroughly. Homeowner shakes their head. Time is up. We vote now. Another wave of agreement rolls through the crowd, people raising their hands, shouting their support. The board is outnumbered, overwhelmed. And for the first time they know it, their power is slipping, and there is nothing they can do to stop it. Homeowner watches as the board president's hands shake ever so slightly. He knows it too. This is the beginning of the end. The room is electric, voices overlapping, neighbors standing shoulder to shoulder, a sea of frustration turned into action. The board president's face is tight, his eyes scanning the crowd, realizing he has lost control. The vice president's lips press into a thin line, her fingers tapping against the table in barely concealed rage. The treasurer keeps his gaze locked on the floor, as if hoping he can disappear into it. Homeowner crosses their arms, watching as the pressure mounts. We want to vote now, someone shouts from the back. More voices rise in agreement, clapping hands, slamming against chairs, feet shuffling with restless energy. The board president raises his hands in a weak attempt to calm the crowd. Please, everyone, this is not how we handle things. We have procedures we must follow. Homeowner steps forward, their voice cutting through the noise. We are following the rules. The HOA bylaws clearly state that if enough homeowners call for a vote of no confidence, it must be addressed immediately. More murmurs, more nodding. The neighbors are listening. And more importantly, they are realizing their own power. Homeowner pulls out a printed copy of the bylaws and holds it up. Section 5, Clause 3 states that if a majority of homeowners in attendance support a vote, the board is required to hold one tonight, right now. The board members exchange panicked glances. The vice president hisses something under her breath to the president, but the damage is already done. People are already raising their hands, shouting in unison. Let's vote, let's vote, let's vote. The board president swallows hard, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. Fine, he says, voice shaking, but we will be the ones counting the votes. Homeowner doesn't miss a beat. No, the homeowners will count. We will do it publicly, right here, right now. A cheer erupts. Neighbors grabbed sheets of paper, pens, anything to write on. Within minutes, a makeshift voting system is in place. One by one, homeowners mark their votes, fold their papers, and drop them into a clear plastic container normally used for community events sign-ups. Homeowner watches the board members, carefully noting the way their faces tighten with each vote cast. As the last vote is collected, homeowner and Lisa step forward to count. Lisa's hands are steady, her eyes sharp as she unfolds the papers, one by one, reading each vote aloud for the room to hear. Remove, 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 keep, remove, keep, remove. The pattern is clear. Within minutes, the results are undeniable. The board has been overwhelmingly voted out. Silence stretches thick and heavy as the final tally is announced, a stunned moment where the reality sets in. Then the room explodes into cheers, people clapping, shaking hands, patting homeowner on the back, relief and victory washing over the crowd. The board president looks like he has been punched in the gut. The vice president storms out. Without a word, the treasurer simply slumps back into his chair, defeated. Homeowner exhales, slowly taking in the moment. They did it. The corruption exposed, the fraudsters removed. But as the cheers continue, homeowner knows this is only the beginning. They still have to untangle the financial mess, rebuild trust, and most importantly, make sure something like this never happens again. But for now, they allow themselves a small smile because the hardest battle has just been won. The board is gone, removed by the very people they have been stealing from, but the real work is only beginning. As the cheers die down, neighbors begin to realize the mess that has been left behind. The HOA's finances are in shambles, the reserves nearly drained, the community still locked into expensive fraudulent contracts. Homeowner stands at the front of the room, scanning the faces of their neighbors, some relieved, some still angry, but most of them looking at homeowner with expectation. So what now? Someone calls from the back. If the board is out, who's in charge now? Homeowner takes a deep breath, knowing this moment was coming. They hold up their hands for quiet. The first thing we need to do is form an interim HOA board, people who actually live here, people we trust to go through the finances and start cleaning up this mess. Lisa steps forward. Immediately, I volunteer, she says firmly. I've been tracking the money for months, and I know exactly where to start. Donovan nods. Count me in. I've been here long enough to know what this neighborhood used to be before these crooks ruined it. Others begin stepping up, neighbors who have lived here for years, people who have watched the HOA become a dictatorship and are ready to take it back. Homeowner writes the names down, and within minutes a temporary board is formed. Homeowner isn't on it by choice. They know their skills are better used elsewhere. But that doesn't mean they're stepping away. In fact, they're just getting started. We also need a full audit. Homeowner says. The crowd murmurs agreement. There's no way to move forward until we know exactly how bad the damage is. Lisa smirks. Already working on it. I have copies of all the financial records, and my cousin is bringing in an independent auditor. Homeowner nods. Good. And we need to contact legal counsel to figure out how to break whatever shady contracts they locked us into. Someone in the crowd, a man in his 40s, raises his hand. I'm a lawyer. I'll take a look at everything free of charge. A few people cheer, patting him on the back. Homeowner feels the tension in the room shifting, the fear and anger being replaced by something new, determination. But not everyone is happy. In the corner of the room, the former treasurer still sits, arms crossed, his face dark with resentment. Homeowner steps toward him, voice calm but firm. You can leave now, unless you'd like to help clean up this mess. A man glares, but says nothing. Finally, he pushes back his chair, stands up and walks out without another word. Good riddance, someone mutters under their breath. Homeowner doesn't disagree. The meeting continues long into the night, plans being made, people volunteering to take on different tasks, emails exchanged, phone numbers shared. By the time homeowner finally steps out of the HOA office, the moon is high in the sky, and the neighborhood is quiet. The air is crisp, the weight on their shoulders lighter than it was just a few hours ago. They glance around at the houses, at the driveways, where kids' bikes are scattered, at the porch lights still glowing warmly in the night. This is what they were fighting for, a community that belongs to the people who actually live here, not to a handful of corrupt board members looking to fill their own pockets. Homeowner exhales deeply, stretching their arms overhead. For the first time in a long time, it feels like real change is possible. And they know one thing for sure: they aren't done yet. The next morning, homeowner wakes up to the sound of their phone buzzing, non-stop messages flooding in emails, calls, voicemails. The HOA shakeup has sent ripples through the entire neighborhood. Some people are thrilled, relieved, hopeful. Others are still skeptical, unsure if anything will actually change. But homeowner knows one thing for certain: there is no turning back now. They get out of bed, grab a cup of coffee, and sit down at their kitchen table where stacks of papers still cover every inch of space: financial records, HOA bylaws, vendor contracts, evidence of years of fraud. Homeowner takes a deep breath, rolls their shoulders, and starts making calls. First to Lisa, who has been up since dawn working through the numbers. "I found something big," she says, voiced sharp and focused. Homeowner listens as Lisa explains there are multiple bank accounts, some hidden under different names, all linked back to the former board members. They were funneling money out for years, pretending it was for community projects, but really they were just padding their own pockets. Lisa pauses, then adds, and get this, they still have control of the main HOA account. They can drain whatever's left before we even get a chance to recover it. Homeowner feels their stomach tighten. "We need to stop them now." Lisa agrees, already on it. "I contacted the bank. They're flagging the accounts, but we need legal authority to freeze them." Homeowner nods, hanging up and immediately calling the lawyer neighbor who volunteered at the meeting. He picks up on the first ring. "I heard," he says, before homeowner can even speak, "I've already started filing an emergency injunction to block any transactions. The bank should hold everything for at least a few days while we sort this out." Homeowner exhales, relief. "Good, that gives us time to act." They spend the next few hours working through more paperwork, coordinating with the interim HOA board, organizing a full forensic audit. Word spreads fast. Soon news stations start calling the story of a corrupt HOA being taken down by its own residents is something people want to hear about. Homeowner ignores the reporters for now, focusing instead on the real task ahead: fixing the damage. By noon, they're sitting in a small community office space turned into an emergency HOA headquarters. Lisa is there along with a lawyer neighbor, Donovan, and a few others. The air is thick with urgency. Homeowner rubs their temples, looking at the numbers. "This is worse than we thought. We have almost no money left in the reserve fund. The former board drained everything." Donovan leans forward, fingers steepled. "So what do we do?" Homeowner takes a deep breath, then lays out the plan. "First, we push for a full criminal investigation. These people didn't just mismanage funds, they committed fraud. Second, we renegotiate contracts, find out what we can cancel, what we can fight. Third, we rebuild from the ground up. We prove to everyone that this HOA will be different." The group nods, determination in their eyes. But just as they start making progress, homeowner's phone buzzes again, this time with an unknown number. They hesitate, then answer, and the voice on the other end sends a chill down their spine. "I hope you know what you're doing," the voice says, low and threatening, "because if you think you can just take us down without consequences, you're dead wrong." The line goes dead. Homeowner stares at their phone, heart pounding, a cold realization settling over them. The former board members aren't just going to walk away quietly, they are going to fight back, and they are willing to play dirty. Homeowner clenches their jaw, looking up at the people in the room. "We need to be ready, because this isn't over, not by a long shot." Homeowner lowers their phone, hand tightening into a fist. The room falls silent as they stare at the screen, the weight of the threat pressing down. But instead of fear, something else rises inside them, resolve. They look up at Lisa, Donovan, the lawyer neighbor. Everyone is watching, waiting. Homeowner takes a deep breath, voice steady. "They just made a big mistake." Lisa leans forward, brows furrowed. "What happened?" Homeowner places the phone on the table. "Someone just threatened me. They want us to back off, to let them walk away with everything they stole. But we're not stopping, not now, not ever." The lawyer neighbor's jaw tightens. "We need to report this to the police immediately." Homeowner nods. But even as they say it, they know the former board is desperate. They have money connections. They won't go down without a fight. The next few days move fast. The emergency injunction goes through, freezing all HOA accounts. The forensic audit uncovers even more fraud, missing funds, shell companies, fake maintenance expenses, all pointing back to the former board members. Homeowner works with the interim board to notify every homeowner in the community. Transparency is key. People deserve to know the truth, and when they do, anger spreads like wildfire. News stations pick up the story. Reporters start showing up outside the neighborhood, asking questions, trying to get statements. Former board members refuse to comment, but the evidence speaks for itself. The lawyer neighbor helps draft formal complaints to local authorities, filing for a full criminal investigation. Then the real bombshell drops. Lisa bursts into the HOA office, eyes wide, breathless. They tried to withdraw money from the frozen accounts. She says, holding up her phone, they actually walked into the bank and tried to move the money to offshore accounts. Homeowner laughs, but there's no humor in it. They're that desperate. The lawyer neighbor wastes no time forwarding the information to the authorities. By the next morning, the police arrive at the homes of the former board members, knocking on doors, serving warrants. One by one, they are taken in for questioning. But the battle isn't over yet. Homeowner knows that trust has been broken. It will take time to repair the damage. Neighbors are weary, exhausted from years of being exploited. Homeowner stands in front of the crowd at the next community meeting, looking at all the faces, young, old, families, couples, people who just want a fair system that actually works. This isn't just about removing a corrupt board. Homeowner says, voice strong. This is about making sure nothing like this ever happens again. We need an HOA that actually serves the community, not one that drains it. We're going to rewrite the bylaws. We're going to create transparency committees. And we're going to make sure no one can ever abuse this power. Again, nods of agreement, murmurs of approval. For the first time in a long time, people feel hopeful. Weeks pass, then months. The investigation continues. Arrests are made, charges filed, but more importantly, that HOA begins to heal. New board members are elected, trustworthy ones. Finances are restored, unnecessary fines revoked, contracts renegotiated. Homeowner walks through the neighborhood one evening, watching kids play in their driveways, watching families sit on their porches, knowing they did the right thing. They stopped the corruption. They saved their community. As homeowner reaches their front door, their phone buzzes again. This time it's Lisa. Everything's finally done, she says. They're never coming back. Homeowner smiles, stepping inside, closing the door behind them. The fight is over, and they won.